We must never forget that the root cause of rising property taxes is always excessive government spending. As with all problems, you must get to that root cause. And together, we did it. And here's the good news. It's working.
Governor Christie hailed the 2% property tax cap enacted in 2011 as a real difference maker for homeowners during his State of the State address. And as Christie continues to push for other toolkit measures, such as sick payout reform, he believes the cap will be even more effective this year. Here with their take on the cap thus far is Elizabeth Mayor J. Christian Bollwage and Orange Mayor Eldridge Hawkins, Jr. Thank you guys both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Now, money is always at the bottom of everything, and that property tax cap is going to determine how much you can actually end up being able to spend. So what impact is this going to have, for example, in Elizabeth?
Well, one of the things that's the problem with the 2% property tax cap is it doesn't take into effect if you lose rateables through tax appeals and other issues. The city of Elizabeth this year is actually cutting their taxes. We have a budget that the city council voted on in December that reduces the average homeowner property tax about $50 to $60.
But that's supposed to be the goal, isn't it? I mean, the governor wanted to lower property taxes.
But it wasn't a 2% property tax that did it. It was the cooperation with the unions in negotiating a very low salary increase, which was less than 2%. That was done before the property tax cap was put in place. It was also done because of the pension and health care issues that are giving us give back. And it was also done through the sale of property. And the sale of property helps lower the property taxes. So the 2% cap, while the governor is touting this as the panacea for the future, as you go forward and you look at municipalities around the state that have had massive layoffs, and you're going to see much more of that in the coming years in order to stay under a 2% cap, because the 2% cap, unfortunately, is only on the property tax levy. It's not on the entire budget. So the city of Elizabeth's budget is about $210 million. Our property tax levy is $110 million. So the 2% is on that $110 million, not the whole budget. So there's another $100 million, and that's grants that are in that budget. That's the expenditures for health care and other things that are in that budget. So taking all that into effect, it becomes extremely difficult to remain in a 2% cap for a long period of time.
What kind of experience are you having over in Orange?
We've had similar problems. I think that in theory, the 2% cap on taxes sounds great. You know, at face value, the residents say, oh, great, my taxes aren't going to go up more than 2%. But first of all, we have to recognize that there's certain costs that are exempt or outside that cap. And beyond that, we have a responsibility to deliver services.
Right.
And if you don't look at the tools, or if you don't give the tools that to municipalities that they need, whether it's civil service reform or some of the things that have been accomplished with respect to binding arbitration or health care contributions, you diminish your ability to deliver services. If a department...
The governor has said that he wants this whole toolkit to come along with the package because it makes it difficult for you guys to make things happen unless you have that full array.
And these things are good, and not to suggest that all of his toolkit measures in their current form should be passed. I think that some of them need work, but in theory, we have to move forward with that. But I think that in many regards, we put the cart before the horse. We set the municipalities up for failure in many respects by binding them to this 2% cap without giving them all they need, all the tools they needed first to comply with it. And that's why with the League of Municipalities, many of us mayors have been down in Trenton fighting to try to push forward some of these reforms to help us better manage our budgets.
Now, you have exemptions that you can take. Does that help at all?
It does help. But the bottom line is when you're faced with current contracts that may have been issued before the cap on binding arbitration or costs in general, in the city of Orange, our budget specifically, approximately 77% of our budget is police and fire related.
Right.
You know, if you have a flat funded department at $10 million and the budget goes up $1 million because of contractual increases, salaries, health care benefits, etc., you're forced to have layoffs and demotions to continue paying the remainder of your force.
Well, let's talk about that then, because this whole reform of the sick pay, for example, buyout, that factors into it as well, doesn't it? Because that's part of paying your police and your fire department and your city workforce.
The governor's proposal on sick pay is going to cause a different effect in municipalities. He's obviously never run a city What's going to happen with city employees and police and fire and public works is they're going to now add the 12 days sick or whatever they get by contract to their days off during the course of a year. They're going to now take these days on a Monday or a Friday in order to not be able to save them. It also
so basically they're going to be able to call in sick just to use up
Right.
these days because they can't buy them out.
It's really a bad policy because in the city of Elizabeth, we don't have this accrued sick time. Police officers and fire officers get 1 year sick time if they get injured or hurt on the job. And then after that year, they have to go on disability or retire. So they don't have the ability to accrue sick or time in the city of Elizabeth. And public works employees and others in City Hall, we're capped at $10,000, which is $5,000 lower than the state rule right now. So the governor's cure-all in the sick leave policy is another trick on the taxpayers. It's not. It's going to cause less accountability, not more.
Well, it's not that it's a trick. I think there does need to be some measure of accountability with respect to sick time. One thing that the mayor said was true. He's alluding to the fact that if you cap the sick time, the employees will use it anyway over time because they know they can't take it when they leave. But the problem is we need to, as a government, mirror ourselves closer to that of the private sector. In the private sector, they don't have this problem so much because if you call out sick on a regular basis, you lose your job.
You lose your job.
Right? In the government world, especially civil service, there's all this protection and all this bureaucracy that protects employees that don't come to work. We don't have the ability in civil service towns to say, you called out sick 5 times this week or 5 times this month, we're going to release you from your duties. They have the ability to stay there and be protected under this veil of civil service, and that's one of the things that need to be addressed. I think as we look at government as a whole, if we can bring ourselves more in line with some of the corporate or private sector policies, again, not one thing is a silver bullet. It's not just a sick reform, but it's giving mayors and administrators the power to manage their government more effectively.
It's going to be interesting, too, as we head into the winter season, and we're going to have snowstorms, and we're going to have to pay to get that all cleaned up. So we'll keep an eye on this one, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, a new class of lawmakers heads to Trenton. We sit down with 2 of the newest members of the legislature and hear what could be in store for 2012 when New Jersey Now continues. Stay tuned.